Change is, in a way, you could look at change. Maybe it's this simple. Change is a test of your relationship with faith.
Yeah.
If you think about faith, yes, including religious faith, spiritual faith, all that, but faith as a value. Faith in yourself and your resiliency and your ability to respond. Faith in the future, despite the news telling you we're doomed. Faith in life itself, faith in other people. Change invites our exploration and awareness of where we are with the issue of faith. How courageously are you choosing to trust the future? Is really what change invites, is that question. And if you're not, maybe you're going through change because you need to take a look at that and become more courageous in your relationship with the future. The ultimate last change we're all going to face, at least as these bodies physically, is that change out of these bodies called death, right?
It's, at the end of the day, I think the goal for myself, and I hope for others listening or watching, is that as you progress in your life, you become more conscientious of the reality of your life and your mind and your body and your heart and your soul. It all goes together. And if we can embrace that, our natural reaction to change is going to be, my lizard brain is going to start kicking in because it's been trained to survive. Okay, but I'm smart enough, we have enough technology and advancement in human knowledge to say, this isn't going to kill me. This change is not going to kill me. So how could I embrace that change and make it something that is good in my life, or at least works out good? Because it's going to happen. It's inevitable. Hello, everyone. It's Stacy and Al with another edition of Fourth Level Conversations. Good morning, Al. How are you, brother?
Good morning, my brother. How are you?
Just awesome. Folks that are watching this, Al and I always get a few minutes to chat before we start these podcasts, and we were kind of reflecting on last week's episode with David Williams and how impactful it was to both of us, just from a personal knowledge of a relationship with Dave and watching the beauty of his life and some of the struggles that he's gone through. And yet here he is standing as an example of someone who wants to make a difference in the world with his life every single day. And if you don't know Dave on Facebook, Dave Williams, you should go follow him because he's got beautiful posts every day that would enhance your life. I'm certain of it. So, Al, we thought about this week that we might talk more about just what's going on in a number of industries. You and I have a background in the mortgage lending industry, and there were more announcements this week of acquisitions and mergers and change, most importantly for the people in those organizations. And we thought we'd talk some about, how do you deal with change, whether it's something you're choosing, and in most cases it's not, but it's also inevitable. So I'll let you have some opening comments and we'll dig into that.
Yeah, I think it's a compelling topic, Stace, because it goes beyond the fact that some mortgage companies have been sold to other mortgage companies and all that. It goes beyond the business world. It's in our life. It's every day. It's children growing up. It's marriages ending, marriages beginning. It's children being born. It is divorce. It's cancer. It is it's both heavy and light kind of things. It might be moving to Portugal. It's any number of things. So change in itself, I think we would be wise to take it on as a topic as a whole of what is it? Why does it unsettle us? Where do we tend to go from our level 3 ego in the face of it? And what might be a level 4 response to turn what often seems like an ending or a tragedy or a problem or a worry into an opportunity for growth and a deeper connection to life and our gratitude for it.
Yeah, perfect. So maybe we start with that question. What is change, Al? And, we were talking earlier about why we resist it so much. And it's because maybe we get comfortable with what it isn't. And for most of it's this concept that you've talked about in your books and publications about warm, safe, and dry. I mean, that just resonates so much for me every time we think about it because I think I've pursued an entire life of can I please? I like to have a little more abundance, but I want to do it incrementally with safety because I don't want to give up or lose or risk what I've already got because I might be uncomfortable. And man, I like being comfortable. So maybe you can talk a little bit about your view about what change is.
Well, I want to hear your opinions as well, Stace.
Sure.
When I think about change, I think, first of all, life literally would be impossible without it, and without it happening constantly. In many ways, it's a fundamental component of life. Change is simply the evolution of circumstance and situations from what it was previously. It's really emblematic to growth itself. And so change is just kind of, in my mind, sort of an evolution or devolution, either up or down, of a situation, but it's something that's different than what was. And, if we look at what astrophysicists would call deep time and geologists would call deep time, the scope of time is so extraordinary that it gives us a real appreciation for what the nature of change is. I'm watching a documentary right now on Netflix that is all about the history of the Earth. And I didn't know this, but 99% of all species of everything who's ever lived has already been extinct. And everything we see in the world today is only 1% of everything that's ever been on this Earth. That's how long it's all gone. And this Earth is 4 or 5 billion years old and a 13 billion years time frame, if you believe that science. I happen to. All right, well, when we throw words out like billions of years, but what does that really mean? Well, a billion is 1,000 million, and a million's 1,000,000, and people who are Christians know Christ was here 2,000 years ago. Man, that is like, you've heard the thing of how you took all of time as a year on the earth, and man would have been here the last 30 seconds kind of thing. That's kind of the scope of it all. What's it got to do with change? Change is always happening. It's always happening in every area of our life, at a cellular level, on a macro level. But how we deal with it, how we respond to it, to a great extent, determines our level of happiness and even our ability to have power within it, and to be able to use change for us rather than against us in terms of our psychodynamics and our happiness and our contentment. So those are some opening thoughts about change. What are some thoughts you have about it, Stacy?
Yeah, you used a term that I thought was really important, and that is growth. And I'm sure everybody says this in every geographical part of this country that if you don't like the weather here, just wait 2 hours and you'll get something different.
Yeah.
And it's certainly true in Colorado between the sunshine and the snow in the same day often. But I think about it like without change, there wouldn't be a healthy environment. And
Right.
so I think if we can take that to our lives also, that change is an important part of our life. I mean, I can't imagine if we had a world of adults that were still behaving all the time like they were 12.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be good. So change to me, I don't think I can define it any better than you've done, but it is a requirement. It's necessary. And if embraced the right way, it is healthy. And change also, as we progress in age, and we've talked about your folks and my folks in the past, and that change sometimes is that regression or de-evolution, if you used that term earlier. And it's going to happen. But the resistance of it is, I think, where we get the negative connotation of change.
Yeah. Tell us about that, Stacy. How do people usually respond to change, but is not their only exclusive option to how to respond to change?
Yeah. Well, so we'll talk about. I think the majority of people respond to change with negativity because it's a threat to their safety, security, and happiness and their level 3 ego, quite frankly. And it's been true for me. I mean, I'm not talking about other people, I'm talking about me. And I think that when we do that, it creates unnecessary suffering, and it probably limits the potential that that change could bring to our lives or our business if we're in an industry where change is happening more rapidly than perhaps we would like. But I do think that there's an opportunity to first stop and be present and recognize it. I was
Mm-hmm.
sharing with you earlier that I've become a kind of a fan of Eckhart Tolle's and the concept of being present and the power of now. And I could share with you more about that book, but uh, people tend to suffer when their mind runs away to the past, and that brings grief and sadness and non-forgiveness and all those things, shame, or it runs to the future, which is where mind tends to go, and it's more about worry and so forth. Or I'm seeing the future as, if I once I get there, I'll be happy and I'll finally will have arrived. And neither one of those really bring about the kind of happiness and inner peace and I think impact that we can have in our lives and in the world. And so I think we resist change because of our minds running to either of those. Listen, when that changed in the past, look what happened to me. It was horrible. And so I want to resist change because of that. Or, whoa, everything's really good. Why do we have to disrupt this? And my future might not be as good if we change. So I think most people respond with their level 3 ego, as I have, with negativity towards change. Your thoughts?
I agree, and I think it's biochemical
Mm,
and part of the psychological imperative of the survival instinct of the ego.
yeah.
I think what I think of the ego as a caveman in a cave that's there with their spear and their torch, trying to keep the saber-toothed tiger from eating them. And so when something changes, the first thing we are biologically designed to do is to discern whether it represents a present or future threat to our survival. So we have a natural biochemical and biological and psychochemical and psychological tendency to look at change with suspicion, leeriness, and looking for where the architecture of negative evolution of that change may end up being a threat to us in the future. It's actually where I've spent way too much of my life worrying, because I'm forever taking things that aren't wrong today, but how could they go wrong? And if so, what did that turn into? And our bodies can't tell the difference. And this is huge, by the way. Our bodies can't tell the difference between something that's happening in front of us that's a threat to us or something that we're imagining that's a threat to us. In both cases, we create a drop in serotonin and dopamine, an increase in cortisol and adrenaline, flight or fight, and all that. And so that's the first biological tendency in relationship to change. And if you listen to that and follow that and you adhere to that, you end up living a life of worry and fear and depression. My mother did, God love her. But her whole life was just fretting. She was afraid of cats, mountains, fires, just you can
Mm,
name it. But we fortunately have this discerning mind that can pause and look at things through an objective, not merely a biological or emotional lens. And when we do, we get to decide what criteria we're going to use as a filter to analyze the change to decide whether it's better or worse. And that allows us to acknowledge it might be better. It doesn't necessarily mean it's worse. And so talk a little bit, if you agree with what I've said there so far, Stacy, talk a little bit about, let's assume now we've moved to the remembrance that we have the ability to objectively look at change and analyze its likely trajectory, its probabilities of this or that. And what is the process through a level 4 mindset of filtering how we're going to do that assessment of change to help know whether or not it can be trusted or maybe even embraced as something that's opportune, that invites greater growth and fulfillment for our lives rather than a threat to it.
Yeah, Al, what you shared just then about the biochemistry of our minds and so forth, and the role that all those different types of chemicals play, it's true. I mean, neuroscientists have labeled that the lizard brain, right? And we've got
Right.
good friends that have built companies around teaching people about that. It actually makes me personally, I'm almost angry with myself when I think about the neuroscience impact. Here's why: because I think it can give me an excuse.
Uh,
And I don't like that. It says that I have not had the fortitude or the mental toughness to say, okay, so I get it. There's chemicals going through my mind, cortisol saying flee, this is bad, all those things. Tough. That's not good for you. You've got a brain that says you don't have to have the caveman mentality that I can't walk out because a saber-toothed tiger is going to eat me if I do.
right. Right.
Um, and so for me, it doesn't make any of that less true. It's all true. The science has proven it. But for me, it's a recognition of that. And so I think as it's at the end of the day, I think the goal for myself, and I hope for others listening or watching, is that as you progress in your life, you become more conscientious of the reality of your life and your mind and your body and your heart and your soul. It all goes together. And if we can embrace that, our natural reaction to change is going to be my lizard brain is going to start kicking in because it's been trained to survive. Okay, but I'm smart enough, we have enough technology and advancement in human knowledge to say this isn't going to kill me, this change is not going to kill me. So how could I embrace that change and make it something that is good in my life, or at least works out good, because it's going to happen. It's inevitable. If you are in the mortgage business today, you have watched the mergers and acquisitions. And those decisions are being made by a very small percentage of people that are running and owning those companies. And it's not always chosen by the people working in those organizations. It's inevitable. And it's not, by the way, if you're mad at your owner or your leader, don't be. It is inevitable given what has happened in the economic viability of the country and the world. So I think how we have to start doing this is to first become more enlightened about our consciousness, right? It's what's resisting it is our ego, which is part of our lizard brain, that's preventing us from using this wonderful thing we've been given in life, and it's called reason. We can reason our way to say, oh, I am observing now. I've become cognitive aware that my body is saying this is dangerous, when my reason says it really isn't that dangerous. And so then if we can move away from that and we start looking at the world and the change with a different lens, that's why there's so many books written on having a positive attitude versus a negative, right? I
Mm.
wish you could just say, if you just read these 10 books on positive thinking, you'll be great. You can go read them and you're going to still battle the same negative tendencies that you maybe had before reading those books. So I'll talk further about how you
Well,
think
I think that's right. I mean, as you're speaking, and I'm thinking about what I do in the face of change, my level 3 ego automatically goes to the worst case scenario, and that predetermines my options of response, which tend to be fight or flight or depression. But I think I almost think of as I look at times I've overridden that. How did I do that? I ask myself first, is this necessarily a bad thing? My company just got sold. Oh my God. What, am I going to get fired? Wait, pause. Is it automatically a bad thing? Well, I don't know. Step 2, get more information.
Mhm.
Let's find out who bought us. What are they like? What is it about them that may be optimal or beneficial for my skill set, my value proposition as a operations, as a loan processor, a loan officer, whatever, it's a mortgage company. Let me do a little bit, let me gather more information before I go down that path of assuming it's bad. Then I want to maybe take a look at things like the leadership and the culture and who the people are over there and how they feel about working there. Is it just a place to go and work so you can make money, or is there maybe some magic, some spirit, some sense of mission that didn't exist where I was before? Huh. And if this is in a personal realm, oh man, I've got a bad cough. Is that cancer? Am I dying? We'll wait, pause, get more information. It might just be a cold.
Mhm.
And it might be something that is a warning shot that you need to kind of get out and start exercising more. So it could be a good thing. So is it a good thing? Basically, let me. Is it possibly a good thing? If so, get more information. Let's find out what it's really like, so we can make an analysis. Then I want to kind of look at it relative to me and see how it fits, not with just who I have been, but who I might be. Are there opportunities in this new climate, this new situation that allow me growth, allow me a new, bigger opportunity that I hadn't thought of? Might it be a positive thing? And then I want to apply the values that I know need to be my buoys, my guidance system of where I know I can last long term. Because if I'm going to consider this as something I'm not going to run away from, let me see if the values of the climate, not only that they say they agree with those values, but it's in the woodwork of the culture and how people operate and how they treat clients and the way they compete in the marketplace and on. And if all that's lined up, absolutely, I will give it a chance rather than just run away. And I'm not going to take the calls from the recruiters or whatnot. I'm going to say, thank you for calling. Keep my number, but not yet. Let me see where I'm at here. In other words, if nothing else, in the case of a company changing out from underneath you, assuming you haven't been laid off as a result and you're still there, you have a chance to do an analysis to see if it's where you wish to sell your time, energy, money, and value proposition as a loan officer, as a loan processor, whatever in the case of a mortgage company. Is this where you want to apply your value proposition, personal value proposition, and professional? Is this a place you could do it? Yes. Is it a place you want to do it? Well, that may then invite you to do investigatory work outside of that environment to see what your other options are before you decide. But by all means, give the new place a chance, because you never know. It might be a safe island in a time when a lot of, safe ship in a storm when a lot of other ships are going to sink. Who's to say you don't hop over here and it sinks too? So don't lose your head. Be calm, be discerning, and go through some of these steps. At least I do, in pausing long enough to see. And I'll just say one more thing, Stacey, and then I'll let you. I'd like to hear your thoughts about it. I think I shared in the previous podcast that a great example of this in my own life was when I got fired from a company I built up, and I thought my life was over. And I thought it was time to divorce my wife and let her have everything and send her and the kids off because I'm a loser. And she listened, and then she said, what if this is the greatest opportunity of your life? And you know what? It turned out to be. It turned out to be, in terms of what it then had me create as a company that's given me a fulfillment I never had in these other jobs. So sometimes change, while scary at first, it's like discovering fire. At first, it burns your fingertips, and then you can cook food, and you basically have an entire change for the entire future of humanity as to how we relate to food and security and warmth and light and all the rest of it. So make sure that we're not automatically responding knee jerk out of our level 3 ego. What do you think of all that, Stacey? And what other filters would you put in place as a process of assessing the change?
Yeah, I think that your description of, I think you gave some sound steps that people could actually do when they're evaluating change. What was occurring to me, having spent nearly 4 decades as a sales leader in the mortgage industry and having a big part of that responsibility being recruiting people away from other organizations, I thought there's a great leadership lesson that we share with people right now. And it's this: don't be a shark in the bloody water. If you're hearing about acquisitions in companies being sold, don't jump in there and say, oh, you're about to change. It's going to be horrible. You should look at us because we're not going to sell our company. And here's what we're going to do. The irony of that, you're asking them to change to come to you. How about if you called them up and said, hey, I heard the news, and I can only imagine how you might be feeling in some of the things that you're considering. And here's what I might share with you. Change is inevitable. And it's not the fault of your leaders. It's not any of that. But maybe I could be a partner to you to help you go through this change in a healthy manner. So if I can be helpful to you, let's have coffee.
Yeah.
Instead of
Yeah.
saying it's going to be horrible, you should leave. I mean, because if you're successful bringing people that way, it's just the first time that you have an error that they're going to hear that from somebody else and leave you. It's just not the right way to build relationships. So be a change agent in the sense of teaching people how to evaluate, consider, maybe be patient through change, and see if it would be the best thing for them. So I was just thinking about that because I've seen it in that particular industry a lot, where we're like, aha, there's news about somebody going on the market. I can go grab all their people. And I used to call that ambulance chasing. And my folks that
Yeah.
were working under me, Al, they'd come to me and say, I heard so and so is being sold. And I said, well, how many months and weeks have you had relationship with the people you want to chase right now? Well, I haven't been able to get into them, but they're going to look right now. And even the ownership of other companies would have that mentality. And I always resisted it because I felt like it's a poor reflection of my own character to say, well, I haven't bothered to try to add value to you before this, but now that you're going to make a change, you should come be with me. I don't know if that's
Well,
relevant.
I think that's really great. I mean, change is, in a way, you could look at change. Maybe it's this simple. Change is a test of your relationship with faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you think about faith, yes, including religious faith, spiritual faith, all that, but faith as a value, faith in yourself and your resiliency and your ability to respond, faith in the future, despite the news telling you we're doomed, faith in life itself, faith in other people. Change invites our exploration and awareness of where we are with the issue of faith. How courageously are you choosing to trust the future? Is really what change invites, is that question. And if you're not, maybe you're going through change because you need to take a look at that and become more courageous in your relationship with the future. The ultimate last change we're all going to face, at least as these bodies physically, is that change out of these bodies called death, right? I think about death a lot. And the Cheyenne would say, today's a good day to die. Death isn't necessarily the negative subject that we've made it in the West. There are cultures that celebrate it because it allows them to celebrate life. Death to me is something that's in an inevitable event that we're all going to go through. But what we think about it and how we see it in many ways controls our whole life getting there. And it has to do again with the issue of faith. And you could think of change as perhaps emblematic of death, that something has ended and now something is beginning. I happen to believe that that's what happens when we die. Something ends and something begins. It's really the nature of energy. Never dies. It just changes form. So change in and of itself is neutral, I would say. It isn't good or bad. It's neutral. What makes it good or bad is what it changes into, and that's based upon the environment that the change is going to now go into. Make sure you're helping purify that environment, at least inside your life, inside my life, by asking yourself, what would faith be thinking right now? Faith would be thinking, no doubt, discernment, for sure. I'm going to get information. I'm going to analyze and assess and look at pluses and minuses and see how it fits and see if there are better options. And if it's too much trouble to move, if it's not enough of a difference, all valid. And by all means do that. But I think I think this has been a good topic today, Stace, because it's more than about companies selling in the mortgage industry. It invites the existential angst of our relationship with the premise of death as the one big change we all have we have a biologic fear of facing that we can override with our consciousness and our minds, which is why you and I are doing these podcasts. Do we know how many people are watching them? I don't. Do we ever really hear from people that watch them? Rarely, if ever. Why are we doing them? Well, one, I do them because I awaken something within me when I'm with you having these dialogues that opens me up to larger possibilities. I learn from you, and I get a chance to be pure in my intentionality toward whoever may watch this, that this body won't be here that much longer. Might be a year, might be 30, but there's a time frame. That's okay. Happens for everybody. But if this day, this podcast, this topic, and Stacy and I doing this can give you a case for faith and a case for dealing with change and even your own death without automatically fearing it, without automatically getting paralyzed by it, then it's been important for us to do this today, because in sharing our ideas with you, we're both just also, we're all walking each other home. So we're also just sort of trying to walk along on that dark road out there in the woods with a torch. And it's lighter when I get to walk with you, Stacy, and maybe we could get some other people here. And pretty soon, who knows, if there's enough of us, we might find a clearing and build a metaphoric village of level 4 consciousness. I'll let you close it up for us today, brother.
That's beautiful. So I think just back to this idea of change, I think you really stated something really important for us to reemphasize. If we're operating with our level 3 egos in our minds, we will see changes negative. It's just, there's no alternative. Level 3 thinking will be negative towards change. Level 4 can make it neutral. And I think that's the piece. And if we can see change as neutral, but it's an opportunity to express our faith, grow our faith, learn about ourselves, learn about other people, impact people positively because we showed them a path to neutrality with that change, then it's all good. And here's the thing, folks, it's going to happen every single day in your life at some level. And particularly as we finish that journey of the walk, and let's do it together, and let's do it with a mind that doesn't resist everything that is inevitable, bringing suffering that isn't necessary. So we love that you're joining us for these. We'll keep going. And if you enjoy them, tell other people about it. We post them on our YouTube channels, and you can direct people there. They can subscribe and get notified when we post another one and so forth. And if you need any help, call us, email us, text us, whatever form of method you'd be interested in, we'll respond to, and we'll be happy to help with no expectations from you at all.
Do they have your contact information, States? They know how to get a hold of you?
It's always attached to the description of the episode. So just click down below and read the description. It's always there.
Great.
Have a wonderful day, everybody. We'll see you next time.
All right. Blessings, my friends.
Thanks. Bye-bye.